Good morning, everybody, and today we're in the town of Alghero, Sardinia, Italy, and we're going to explore town. New place for us, so come along, see what we find.
We are on day 2 of our 21-day voyage, and this morning we are anchoring in the port of Alghero on the island of Sardinia. And after a quick coffee and pastry in Seabourn Square, we are on a tender taking us to the old harbor below the medieval walls of Old Town Alghero. The most popular tours to do when in Alghero is first to visit Neptune's grotto, and that would involve a boat, which, according to the operator that morning, may go later today if we get enough people. The other option is go hiking and visiting the neuralgic archaeological sites. So, not having set time for a boat tour and Donna about to enjoy the manager's special at the spa, we opt just to wander around Old Town Alghero. Sardinia, and particularly the area surrounding Alghero, like Corsica, has roots going back thousands of years, and there are neuralgic archaeological sites found throughout the island. These have remains of towers and necropoli predating the Carthaginian and Roman eras. The town of Alghero has its roots dating to the 11th century, when a Genoese family strengthened what was a small fishing village into a strategically important trading port. The port was important enough both the Pisans and the Argonians fought with the Genoese for centuries for control of Alghero. As we wander around the outer walls of the city, you can imagine defending the ocean front from multiple angles. The Genoese were able to hold the town until 1353, when Aragon, with support from the mighty Venetian fleet, were able to take Alghero. By 1354, Peter IV of Aragon expelled the Italian and native populations of Alghero and brought in new populations from Catalonia. This influence can be heard today as you walk the streets of Alghero, where Catalan is the preferred language in this very small corner of Italy. So it's not just our American ears, that's really not Italian we hear. While Italian is certainly spoken throughout Sardinia, there is one of the more interesting mixes in the dialect stemming from the past culture of conquest and patriation of this unique island. Just don't be too surprised when your buongiorno is answered with a bon dia. Alghero remained part of the Kingdom of Aragon until 1720, when, following the War of Spanish Succession, Spain ceded Sardinia to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, who promptly swapped Sardinia for Sicily. Voila! Tu es semi-français? Alghero also had 2 deadly and devastating bouts of plague. The first in 1582 might have been prevented, or at least lessened, as the town doctor who had seen the plague years before in Messina was called to treat a gravely ill woman. He recognized the disease, but town officials, fearing panic and a loss of business, delayed action and the town was nearly wiped out. Again in 1652, this trading post was struck. While there were health protocols back in the 17th century, they were not followed, and sailors brought the disease into the town, and 75% of the population died. Ultimately, Sardinia and the town of Alghero were brought into a unified Italy under Victor Emmanuel II in 1861 as part of the Piedmont region north and west of Genoa, former Savoy region. Along the walls facing the Mediterranean, we find stairways down to the water. The rocks along these walls are just loaded with small gastropods munching on the algae. Always worth a closer look. At the center of town is the Cathedral of Santa Maria and a striking octagonal bell tower. We are welcomed by some very fat cats out front who invite us to poke our heads into this highly marbled church, which began construction in the 16th century and was completed about a century later. So there's quite a bit packed into this little town that still sells red coral jewelry in the small alleys full of shops, restaurants, and pensione-style hotels. After touring through the old town, we head down to the promenade along Alghero's harbor. The harbor is also the home of what we were told by the tourist office is the only public restroom in town. Ah, yes, it is Italy at its core. I knew it. Bring your euro coins for the automated entry. Now the promenade stretches from the harbor and out along Lido de Alghero beach. The first thing you notice along the 1.5-kilometer stretch of sand is the mounds of dead seagrass. Alghero, in fact, is named after all this seaweed, or maybe inappropriately as algae from the Latin. The seagrass in question is Posidiania oceanica, and the presence of the seagrass is actually a good thing ecologically speaking. The offshore meadows of seagrass shelter juvenile fish and clean the waters around Sardinia. The downside is that if you're here when the seagrasses are decomposing on the beach, it's not terribly pleasant, but today it's clear, dry, and cool. We discovered these things which I thought were tribbles, but in fact, they're known as Neptune balls. More specifically, it's an egograppili, made from the fibers of the Posidiania oceanica. Waves roll the fibers around over time, shaping them into these compact balls. So Donna Doobie is heading back to the ship for an early lunch before her spa day. But in classic fashion, I'm going to press on up the shoreline. Now all that seagrass is doing its job because you can easily spot fish swimming close to shore in the crystal clear water. Beach life is pretty quiet this time of year, but there's at least one water sports hut renting paddleboards and several cafes open as we continue our wander. At the end of the beach, hey, there's one of those fancy pay potties. Seems like a good spot to turn around. Sardinia, like most Mediterranean islands, relies significantly on tourism to bolster its economy. However, there's also a very robust and varied agriculture economy on the island. So, here's the famous sardines of Sardinia. Unique products such as cork, artichokes, regional wines and cheeses, and there's even a little mining that occurs here. Just off Lido Beach, we can also see aquaculture pens, and sea bream is harvested near Alghero. Before heading back to the ship, I can't resist taking one more walk up onto the walls of Alghero and thinking about the defense of the city. It's time to play Catapult or Trebuchet. So the tourist folks in Alghero must know that we all have a passion for slinging rocks along the way. Torsion catapults date all the way back to the Greeks and could effectively launch a stone several hundred pounds around 200 to 300 meters. More of a siege weapon than defense, they fell out of use except for, say, launching a grenade out of a trench in World War I, with the adoption of more explosive products in the 15th century. The more complicated trebuchet, when not killing its operators, could launch projectiles about a quarter of a mile, which would still leave the Seabourn Encore out there in safe distance. Now, by the 15th century, cannons would have been the preferred defensive tool, and surprisingly, this technology stayed relatively stagnant and effective for centuries. Early cannons shot stone cannonballs that were ultimately replaced by iron. For the most part, the effective range of cannons in the Middle Ages would be about 500 yards or so. Although, there were some artillery which had a range up to a mile, but they carried a lot of powder, and with it, a lot of risk. Alright, Encore, I guess you're safe today. The only battle I'm fighting right now is hunger. So back on board, I order room service, the SRF Prime Burger, which shows up in about 15 minutes for a little alfresco balcony dining. The description was Snake River Farm Prime Beef, aged Gruyere cheese, secret sauce, garden salad, and fries. I added bacon. It's delicious, but I guess we're out of Gruyere cheese on this one. So this evening, it's the signature dinner night and formal night on board. It's also where I think Seabourn had a pretty significant misstep for this class of travel. With Donna Doobie's dietary restrictions, we called the dining line before heading into town to request a special meal tonight in the restaurant, specifically a steak or the like. With some rough communication, she was told flatly, We cannot do that without 24 hours notice. Can't and really 24-hour notice to find a steak? Seventh trip on Seabourn never heard the 24-hour requirement. Well, at least it was French night in the colonnade, so we had some escargot, which was great, and French onion soup with no cheese. I guess that kind of explains the lack of Gruyere for the burger. And they had beef and lobster for entrees. Yeah, these are all first world problems, I know, but they did run out of bread at dinner as well. It was good, and we finished with a pot de creme and the creme brulee. Not tragic, but it's less than we'd expect from our past trips overall. The evening show, however, was excellent, with West End performer Sabrina Aloueche belting out musical classics all the way to the back row. Now tomorrow we hit España, so for now, good night everyone.